Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. My name is Vetri, and I do cover daily fantasy as well as fantasy sports in a range of sports. But right now today, I want to talk about some season-long fantasy. I want to tell you about some wide receivers to be avoiding based on their current ADPs, their average draft position, in a PPR format, and honestly, really just a normal format if you don't do PPR. If you're not doing PPR, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. You, if you're the commissioner or the commissioner of your league, has to change that. So normally I cover daily fantasy sports, Draftkings, and FanDuel, but I am going to be pumping out more and more season-long content. You can check out some of my season-long content around the NFL running back situation. Some values to look at right now due to ADP. So before we get into this video, I'm going to give you 9 players that you should kind of pass over and at least target the guys around them rather than these specific names. Some of them are going to be sexy names to you. Some of them, if you're just starting to do your daily fantasy or really your fantasy football research or the past week or two, they're going to seem like they're still good plays. And really, honestly, they're terrible. And I have a personal story to tell you about this in literally a matter of seconds. But hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS if you get any value from this. And drop down below in my description. I have a lot of free things to give away down there. There's some strategy guides, a daily fantasy course, and I have some content over on Patreon. But for now, we'll just let you hit that subscribe button and tune in. I'm going to give you 9 names. We're going to go through it. We're going to talk about them. The first one is Calvin Ridley. So Calvin Ridley, his ADP, you can see to start the year, was in the top of the 5th round. He was getting drafted in the 4th round. That's way too high for a rookie who rarely do you see rookies have success in their first year, right? He had a lot of success, double-digit touchdowns. I don't expect that to continue. I just don't. A guy who is going to have a lot of upside in his first year normally, unless your name is Odell Beckham Jr., you will regress in your second year. And I find it really hard to believe we won't see natural regression on him due to the fact that Julio Jones also plays on his team, due to the fact that Devonta Freeman, a guy who was out for the far majority of that season and is a very sure-handed pass-catching running back, is going to be there to take even more targets away from the wide receivers in terms of overall target share. So Calvin Ridley, who kind of stabilized in now the mid to the upper 5th round, is a wide receiver in that range, and I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to be going elsewhere. So when you're in your draft and you see Calvin Ridley, you just know that you're drafting a guy based on his last year, his rookie statistics, that potentially could be the best season of this guy's career if he is going to be running alongside Julio Jones for the next, whatever Julio's deal that they're working on will be, the next 4+ years or 3 to 5 years. I don't want to buy the hype on Calvin Ridley. The wide receiver 2s usually do well in that offense, but you're buying what happened last year, which is potentially the peak of Calvin Ridley. And I'm not saying he can't duplicate that, but expecting him to back-to-back years, especially when they're going to have, 1, more plays in this offense from Mohamed Sanu, especially around the red zone. 2, I imagine some sort of regression in terms of Julio Jones touchdowns coming a little bit more naturally. We've never seen it really in his career, but there's upside for that. And then 3, just Devonta Freeman is a huge piece to kind of add into this. Austin Hooper takes another step forward at the tight end position. I do have worries about Julio or at Calvin Ridley at his ADP right now. He's the first guy I would avoid. Second guy that we would avoid, Antonio Brown. I don't get it. I don't get you people. This is the public. So what you're seeing is a chart of the average draft pick by the day. I'm looking at it from the end of July right now to yesterday, or actually today. So a month span. I don't get you people. The worst thing that happened to Antonio Brown was he got moved to the bottom of the 2nd round when all this stuff came out about him wanting to retire the helmet on August 13th or 14th. Now he's back up to the middle to the top of the 2nd round. He's getting drafted right now as still a top 10 wide receiver, a top 7 wide receiver in most spots. I don't get it. Not only is, look, the antics I can care a little bit less about. Now, him threatening retirement, him complaining about all this stuff, sure, that's a little bit worrisome. You don't want him to just not play 1 week or just, you say, you know what, I'm not playing these last 2 weeks or whatever he was doing in Pittsburgh last year. That's one part to kind of be concerned about. But that's not even the thing. All of these antics are getting overcast by the fact that he has a serious foot issue right now. It's technically not frostbite, Dr. Chow says, but it's something that's similar to that. You're an aging wide receiver that's hitting the 30-year-old wall. Sure, he's still talented. Sure, he's going to go into an offense now that he'll still be the number 1 wide receiver. But there's a lot of cons here, and I don't expect him to be a top 10 wide receiver. There's many guys in that range, even at his same position, that I'd rather have when I'm approaching him in drafts for PPR. You drafting him in the middle of the 2nd round, really, right? In a 12-person league, you're drafting him as a top 20 fantasy pick, a top even 18 or 17, 15 in a lot of situations fantasy pick is just ludicrous to me. The fact that this foot is an issue now, and he's a wide receiver, an aging one, like we said, that's a huge dilemma that nobody's talking about because all of his other antics are kind of casting over the fact that he has a very big issue with his foot that Dr. Chow said could limit him all season long and probably should. And then you also take into account that he's going from one of the most, if not the most pass-friendly team in the league. They threw the most on first down, threw the most on second. They threw the most on every single down last year. They threw the ball to the running backs, wide receivers, and Big Ben, a stable quarterback, to now going to an offense that yes, it seems exciting. Josh Jacobs, a rookie running back. Darren Waller, a rookie tight end. These guys seem exciting. You get Tyrell Williams on the outside of Burner, and now you have AB. But you have Derek Carr still in an offense that looked very stagnant last year that still has some offensive line issues. I'm not totally sold on Antonio Brown being a second-round pick. I'm never going to get Antonio Brown because where I would draft him in the third round, he's not going to fall to ever. So that's Antonio Brown, second guy. Third guy is Corey Davis. Now, I'm not totally mad about Corey Davis because, look, his ADP has been just sinking, right? It was a beginning of the 9th round type of guy. Then he goes down to the bottom of the 9th round, getting him in the 10th round. If you're getting him in the 10th, 11th round, I like Corey Davis. I think he's fine there. He has upside. There's a lot of issues, though. Look, the new head coach there, Matt LaFleur, is now gone in Green Bay. Matt LaFleur was very high on Corey Davis, and even he could not get him implemented properly into this offense. Corey Davis's overall separations have not been great. His air yards have been good, but they just drafted A.J. Brown in the second round, a guy that they're really hyping up right now in the preseason. They still have other guys out there in terms of getting targets right now in the preseason alongside an A.J. Brown. They're going to be very run-heavy this year, and they've kind of already stated that in some coach speak, giving Derrick Henry the rock 25 times a game, and then you do have Dion Lewis to spell him in the short passing work. So Corey Davis, sure, at that draft price, he could be okay, but I'd rather go elsewhere. I'd rather have my if you're going for the wide receiver position, upside wide receivers, some rookie or second year guys who slumped last year and could potentially be breaking out this year. A guy that comes to mind is a John Ross in that type of range. So I don't want the Corey Davis, the guy who's going to be playing in an offense where there's already rumors, and they're not very stable rumors, right? They're just fan speak, not even coach speak. That Marcus Mariota, he hasn't looked good in the preseason. 3 weeks of the preseason, he won't play in week 4. He's only had like 80 yards, very much struggling to move the offense. Outside of one drive where he threw a touchdown to Delanie Walker, he hasn't looked great. And speaking of Delanie Walker is back, and he actually looks great based on the fact that he had an injury, 10 months ago, and he seems extremely healthy, and he's going to be another piece of this offense that, at least in the middle of the field, is going to just take away even more targets from a Corey Davis who already wasn't drawing many targets. So I'd avoid Corey Davis even in that late spot. Donte Pettis is probably the biggest avoid here. And this is the personal story. My cousin, shout out John, he just drafted Donte Pettis in one of his leagues. I have no idea why. Look, if you're getting back into the swing of things now, you haven't been tracking off-season moves. You haven't been tracking or playing daily fantasy sports for the preseason. That is the main reason I have all this education. I've been grinding every single day, reading 2 to 3 hours of beat reporters a single day. Donte Pettis he's not even on this team yet. Like, he's still fighting for the team. They said he's going to play in the 4th preseason game because Shanahan wants to see if he can make the team. Like, Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd are rookies. They're moving ahead of him. Marquise Goodwin is still out there. He's moved ahead of him. Trent Taylor is the slot wide receiver. He's moved ahead of him. That's 4 guys right there. Now, there's other guys on this team battling for a spot. Kendrick Bourne, Ricky James Jr. Those guys are still battling for a spot. You probably see Kendrick Bourne make the team. So Donte Pettis is battling for the 5th and 6th wide receiver spot. You're going to say, Sal, no, you're crazy. No, you haven't been keeping attention. Donte Pettis has fallen down the ranks. He came into camp out of shape. He's been playing terrible. Lots of drops, not getting separation in camp. He has not been playing well in the preseason. Everything about Donte Pettis is terrible. And now you also add in that 2 rookie wide receivers have been having an exceptional camp. They've leaped him. He's going to play potentially in the week 4 preseason game where no valuable players play because Shanahan said we have to see more out of him before saying that he's made this team. That's very scary to be drafting a guy who might not even be on the team, who, as of 2 weeks ago, was getting drafted at the top of the 7th round. Now you can clearly see this sharp trend downward right there. Anytime you see that, stock market, whatever it might be, that's a bad thing. He's now getting drafted in the 9th round, and even there, I don't want him. I would not draft Donte Pettis at all. Not at all a good value, not at all even a good player to have on your team. He's falling down this depth chart very quickly. And then not even the wide receivers. You add into the fact that, sure, Jimmy G is back, but a lot of Pettis' upside last year came with Nick Mullins, who won't be the quarterback now. And then Donte Pettis, you add into the fact that Garrett or George Kittle is on this team in the middle of the field as well. He's going to be, the 5th option on this team, maybe the 6th, when you factor in some rushing running backs from the Matt Breidas, who's an elite pass-catching back, in my opinion, when you factor in Tevin Coleman, who has pass-catching upside. It's a very scary place to be drafting Donte Pettis in the 7th, 8th, or 9th round. I would stay away from it. He is the biggest fade, in my opinion. AJ Green. So this one's kind of clear and obvious, but AJ Green is now falling. If he continues to fall, he's going to become a value. But they're saying AJ Green now is getting pushed back to week 3 to 4 in his recovery. So you're starting out missing a quarter of the season, or really when you factor in playoffs, regular season, a third of the regular season for fantasy out of your wide receiver. And it's a foot injury. We've seen guys come back from these type of injuries and not be the same. Every single year we've seen it. I'm not very much in the neighborhood of trying to draft this guy who, when they come back with an ankle or a high ankle sprain and then they miss another 2 to 3 weeks, they're just never themselves. Every single year it happens. It's the number one thing to watch out for when guys come back into training camp are high ankle sprains. It's the biggest thing that trainers talk about. AJ Green's trainer was literally talking about it in an interview with ESPN 2 days before it happened. They were saying, what are you looking out for in terms of keeping your players healthy? They said high ankle sprains, foot injuries, all of that. And AJ Green, there he goes down once again. I don't want to draft him. He was in the top of the 4th round even after he got hurt. Now he's going to the bottom or mid 5th round. I still don't want him at the middle of the 5th round. At the best, you're getting him back like week 4 or 5. And then there's also a bye in there. So you're missing him for 5 or 6. Right now, probably we'll call it 5 weeks of the season. At best, right? And that's if he suffers no setbacks with this type of injury. It's probably the number one injury for a wide receiver to suffer setbacks on. Don't give me any AJ Green. Go get your Tyler Boyd. He's not getting drafted high enough right now. He's a really good pick, actually. We'll talk about him in the value videos for wide receivers. But stay away from AJ Green. Marquez ValdesTechnical. Look, the sexy option in Green Bay. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be back and healthy. They got this great offense, great defense now. I'm a Packer fan. I'm not drafting Marquez ValdesTechnical. Look, his trend has been tracking downward, right? Top of the 9th round. But if you look at this, it looks like he's trending much big downward, like really big drop-offs. But he's really just going from the first pick in the 9th round to the 5th or 6th. Like, it's not a huge drop-off. He's still getting picked beginning to middle of the 9th round. I don't want him because there's another guy on his team who's much better in a much better situation, and people are starting to forget about the Gary Vaynerchuk product, his Vayner Sports. He owns him pretty much. Well, not owns him, right? But he manages him. Geronimo Allison. Before he got injured at the first quarter of the year last year, in the first 4 or 5 games, he either had a touchdown or 5 to 6 targets in every single game. He either had 60 yards receiving or a touchdown in every single game. He was a burner down the field. Caught a deep, long touchdown week 1. Aaron Rodgers is looking Geronimo Allison's way. Now, MVS is still going to be a fine play, especially if he goes into the slot more. Yes, you like wide receivers in the slot. If you are not familiar, they get easier matchups in the slot. They're usually a bigger wide receiver versus the number 3 or 4 cornerback on a team when you go into the slot, and they just have more ability to utilize their entire skill set rather than having to catch a jump ball or burn a guy down the field. They can actually make a guy move and miss at the line of scrimmage and go either way, where really you can't go left if you're on the left hash mark. You can't go right if you're on the right hash mark as a deep burner. So MVS has some upside there, but I'd much rather Geronimo Allison, who's going later in drafts, and in my opinion is going to have more targets this year, more receptions this year, more touchdowns this year, more yards, all of that, if indeed he stays healthy, which again, he's not a guy who has been riddled by injuries. It's just 1 year last year he got hurt. So MVS is a pass for me just because there's other guys in that range I like more upside. It's a hype coming in on MVS when last year he got a lot of his opportunities because of the fact that Geronimo Allison was out, and then it was really just a couple of weeks. There was 2 weeks of good MVS performances for the most part, and everybody's hyping those up. You also draw in that this is a contract year and a prove-it year for Jimmy Graham, and then you also draw in that Robert Tonyan, the backup tight end for the Packers, has been getting more and more work with the first team reps, and they want to use him in the middle of the field. That hurts MVS's slot upside, so I'm going to stay away from MVS as well. Marquez ValdesTechnical. I'd rather draft his teammate Geronimo Allison 3 to 4 picks later. Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry is a guy I'm staying away from. He's getting drafted way too high right now. Jarvis Landry is being drafted as a top 25 or a top 20 wide receiver in many drafts. You can see he started the year out middle of the 5th round, 5th overall pick in the 5th round was where he would be going. Now he's getting drafted at the end of the 5th round. It's still too high. In my opinion, Jarvis Landry is not a top 30 wide receiver this year. You can say what you want about it. He's battling an injury right now, but he's a guy who he relies on volume, right? When Jarvis Landry is on a team, he relies on volume. Now, where he's been with Miami, he was a volume machine. He was their number 1 option out there. Where he's been last year before Odell came with Cleveland, he was their number 1 option out there, right? Nobody else was even close in terms of trying to get some of the volume. And he suffered last year a little bit with Baker Mayfield not looking his way too much. Now you bring in a guy who's going to have 100 catches in Odell Beckham Jr. Where does Jarvis Landry get his upside? He's not a guy who scores a ton of touchdowns. He's a guy who lives on getting 10, 11 targets and catching 8 of those for 80 or 90 yards. Now if you're going to be throwing 100 catches and however many targets, 150 plus targets to Odell Beckham Jr., where are you going? And now you're telling me that Nick Chubb is going to implement more pass catching work since Duke Johnson is gone. Where is Jarvis Landry's upside here? I really don't know. Rashad Higgins is also pushing as a wide receiver 3. Lots of upside in the preseason, having a lot of connection with Baker Mayfield, not only in preseason games, but in practice. Jarvis Landry as a top 20 to 25 wide receiver. You're drafting him based on name value. Don't be drafting players based on name value. Oh, Sal, he's Jarvis Landry. No, look at the situation. This man survives on the short to intermediate passes and getting a lot of targets. Odell, Nick Chubb, they're going to take those targets away. And even Rashad Higgins, if you don't know the name, keep an eye on it. So Jarvis Landry as a top 20 or 25 guy, drafting in the 5th round, no upside there for me. I don't see the upside in his season this year. That's like 2 rounds too high for me, in my opinion. Emanuel Sanders. So Emanuel Sanders, tore his Achilles, right? That's an injury you don't come back from. The guy's 32 years old. I don't even know. In general, I wouldn't draft a 32-year-old wide receiver. Now he's coming off of an injury tear. So since he looked good in one preseason game, right? He caught He caught like a 5-yard pass, and then he took another end around and made a couple of jukes. He looked fast. He took some contact. And from there, you just see him shoot up the rankings. He was getting drafted in the end of the 10th round, literally a couple weeks ago. Now he's getting drafted in the 8th round. You all are crazy. Never, never, ever should you draft a guy coming off an Achilles tear at 32 years old in the 8th round. Look, if you were still getting him in the 11th, 12th round, he was free, sure, you can take a chance on it. And that's what I would do. But I would take a chance if you don't have to draft him. Sorry, I was looking at some messages. But I would not be drafting him in the 8th round. He's 32 years old. There's other guys out there that they have more faith in. Deshaun Hamilton, second-year guy at Penn State, looked good last year when AB went down. Courtland Sutton is a big name that they're kind of throwing out there, second-year guy again. They have a lot of faith in. Tim Patrick is another wide receiver that they like. Look, this is an offense that's going to survive around the running game more than likely. Joe Flacco is there. He has looked good, but not a guy who you're going to light it up with at this point in his career. And just outside of the environment he's in, this is a guy coming off an Achilles tear at 32 years old. Do not be drafting him. Just let other people take that fault, right? He's going to lose something as the year goes on. Do not let his 10 snaps in the preseason change your mind from not drafting him at all to drafting him in the 8th round. Just disgusting, in my opinion. Do not go there. If you're still watching right now, before we get into the last guy, if you could hit the subscribe button, I appreciate that. Let's hit the like button to try and get this video up the rankings. I would love to grow this crowd. I'm doing it full time now. We have about 6,600 subscribers. And if at all, you can just hit that button. It does help me out. And please follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. So, T.Y. Hilton, a guy who was a very good option before Andrew Luck retired a couple days ago, 3rd round pick. He's now dropped off the face of the earth to the 5th round. I still don't want him. Look, Jacoby Brissett is fine. T.Y. Hilton overall volume should be okay. But overall, I'm not going to be getting to T.Y. Hilton. At the end of the day, I won't be getting there just due to the fact that overall volume will not be as high and overall volume is going down, so opportunities are going down. This is being reflected by 2 rounds in the draft, but I still don't want to take that chance. You still have uncertainty here. Why spend a 5th round pick on a guy who you're not going to have overall upside in? I don't want to go top of the 5th, bottom of the 4th. When this is all settled, you'll probably get people hyping him up again, and he'll be getting taken in the 4th round, closer to the season starting. Now, in preseason or in DFS, he's fine when he's going to be cheap in Draftkings FanDuel. But I'm not taking this risk on a guy who, yes, I think Jacoby Brissett is a fine wide receiver or fine quarterback overall, and seems to know the system, right? The guys that were around him in New England are now there in Indianapolis, but I'm not spending a 5th pick on this guy, T.Y. Hilton, now that we don't know what the overall outlook is going to look like for him in this offense. We don't even know what the offense around Jacoby Brissett for a full season looks like, and I don't even know that the Colts do. So when it matters of times of uncertainty, when I'm putting money up or I'm facing my friends in a daily or a fantasy football league, I'm just going to avoid it. I'm not going to go there. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, if this is your first time finding me, let me know in the comments down below that you watched the entire thing. Hit the subscribe button. Hit me up on Twitter. Whatever you might have to do. There's stuff in the description below. I really appreciate it. I hope I reach a new audience with this video. My name's Sal. You already know that based on watching this. See you later. Peace out, gang.
Hey, hold up. 1 second. Check out this page. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button, all right? And if you're interested in Patreon, if you're not already a patron, you can hit that button on Patreon, become a patron, it will take you right there. You can also check me out on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. And hey, if you're interested, this next video that's about to pop up, why don't you check it out as well. See ya.